At this time, it is my profound pleasure, again, as we remain in study, to continue to be enriched and inspired and to be enlightened as we come to our Learning Lab 2, to share with the Reverend Santarvis Brown Sr. He will come and deal with matters of great concern as we've been moving through this pandemic, and to gather with us in the light in which he has been designated in the district. He is our district coordinating person for social action and justice. And so he will come as the Lord has led him with this moment of study. Hear ye him, the Reverend Dr. Santarvis Brown Sr., pastor of our Zion at the St. Stephen's Church in Miami Gardens. Pastor Brown.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Elder, for this invitation to come today. Thank you to you and the consultant, and certainly greetings and a hello to everyone in their respective places. I want to begin publicly and say I feel that I'm at a grave disadvantage having to follow my dean of the Board of Examiners when I was coming through, the Reverend Eddie Moise, now chair of the board. And I'm really at a disadvantage with my classmate from seminary, the Reverend Dr. Carl Wallace, in singing that song. So now not only did I have presenter's nerves, now I have preacher's nerves, as I felt we've had the hymn of preparation before I come forth. So thank you to both of them and to everyone for the opportunity today. I'm going to share my screen. I want to thank Brother Jones, who's helped me through my tech woes. So I think that we'll be in good company today. Fair warning to everybody, I'm going to talk a little bit, but I want us to engage in dialogue and conversation, especially on this topic today. All right, here we go. Okay, so the elder tasked me with the responsibility as the district social action committee chair to focus on social justice. And after much thought, I was able to tie in walking in the light, our district theme today, to kind of tie into walking in the light of social justice. Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay. All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
So let us go forward. Now, it's important to note when we talk about social justice, I must admit that I have difficulties with AME church members who say we do social justice work. And I struggle with that because not only do we do social justice work, but we are social justice work as the African Methodist Episcopal Church. If you remember in our founding, or in the moments of our founding in November of 1787, look at why we were founded, because the persons of color could not exercise their basic spiritual rights of kneeling down to pray at the altar at St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church. And from that moment on, we've been a social justice movement. Even after we formed the African Methodist Episcopal Church and had the first general conference and became the infrastructure that we are today, looking at the genesis of that moment and moving forward, what did we do when we left St. George's Methodist Church after our organization and our founding? We further enhanced our scope of social justice by founding schools. We founded Wilberforce, we founded Allen University, Edward Waters College, Shorter College, Cottrell College, Paul Quinn College, further enhancing our work in social justice. So I want everybody to understand as we begin this discussion today, not only do we do this work of social justice, but we are social justice. And it's ironic, yesterday we celebrated the Founders Day, we celebrated the birthday of Bishop Richard Allen, the founder of the church, and he was the originator, in my opinion, in my lowly opinion, as he was the originator of the first social justice project or first social justice movement done by African Americans, okay? The elder gave me 3 focal scriptures And we're going to look at these quickly, and I'm going to give some exegetical work on these individually. So, number one, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos chapter 5, verse 24, familiar text. Micah 6:8, he has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Matthew 23:23, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. Now, let's look at these scriptures a little more. And this is a little 1 minute exegetical exercise, so just go with us. Amos chapter 5, verse 24 says a few things that we need to look at. It says, let justice roll like a mighty river. Now, even before I go there, let me go back to the first word of that scripture, but. And I think that's an important word to look at, because what the text writer was trying to get us to understand was, regardless of whatever's going on in society, justice has to prevail. And it gave an indictment of us, but you let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Now let's look at this. When you think of a mighty river, if you've ever seen a mighty river, it can do three things. Number one, it floods. Number two, it forms new paths. And number three, it washes away things that are not securely rooted. Okay, now let's look at that a little further. So what the writer of Amos was trying to get us to understand was justice needs to flood the landscape. It needs to form new paths. We have seen throughout our history, even sadly, there's a saying that says, if you do not learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. And so we're seeing now that we are continuing to see the cycle of police brutality, the disvaluation of Black lives, Black systematic racism in the justice system, oppression at work, sexism, classism. We're seeing all of that continue to cycle. But when justice rolls like a mighty river, it's admonishing us to form new paths. And it's also admonishing us to wash away the things that are not securely rooted. So we basically have the mandate to wash away all of the injustices, wash away all of the prejudice, all of the systematic racism. And that's a big task, but that's what Amos 5:24 is telling us. Like a mighty river, we've got to wash it clean and set it right, and even change the path if we have to. And then as we look in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, 3 words, easy exegetical assignment, 3 words: act, love, and walk. In act, it's telling us to get up. If we look in the context of our history as a society, and more specifically as a church, we got up in November of 1787. Love, those who love us and those who hate us. Now, it's easy to love somebody who loves you. It's easy to love somebody who likes you, but the true barometer test comes: can we love those who hate us? This past weekend, I was looking at a movie. I don't even remember the name of the movie, but it was a movie that touched me. So I just happened to find it on TV, and it talked about a police officer, a Black sheriff in a town who took in a homeless Klansman and his family. And there were all kind of issues in the movie that struck a nerve with me. But the first one was that the Klansman was known to terrorize not only the sheriff, but other Black residents in that community. But when the Klansman was homeless with his baby, the sheriff said, "Come live with me." Now, the sheriff's wife and children looked at him like, "Are you crazy? This the same man that's burning crosses on our yard and terrorizing us. They're calling us all these horrible, and you gonna invite him to dinner and to live here?" He had to love. And then walk. Protest. Go places. And then quickly, as I hasten, Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. You have done the superficial stuff, but you have not done what was required. Pastor Moise said something that was really thought-provoking for me in his presentation, where he talked about that we are spiritually deficient. And I would argue that we're justice-minded deficient as well. And I offer that because I think that some of us have we have forgotten the importance of the liberating ethos of the church, because we've gotten so caught up in church. Now, to relate that to the pandemic, I think that all of us who are pastors on this Zoom call today, we all had gotten used to the comforts of our sanctuaries. We got used to knowing that there was going to be an organist to play that hymn when we opened the church in the morning worship experience. We got comfortable knowing that there was going to be an organist to back us up, possibly when preaching. There were going to be ushers to take up the offering, but the pandemic has put us in the mindset of knowing that the comforts we took for granted may not always be around. And it's interesting because I take joy when I see, especially churches in the Central District, when I see us engaged in our Zoom worship services, or where we see that we're out there sharing worship or passing out communion or doing whatever we could do, because there's some churches who got so caught up in church that now when the church is really needed, they can't be the church. I'll say that again. There are some churches who were so caught up in being the church and doing church that now when the church is really needed, they can't do it. And so these are just some exegetical points for us to consider today. Now, the consummate theme among all of those scriptures is what we're supposed to do. And the question that I want to begin with you today is, how do we do what is required? Okay. I offer to you that these are a few suggestions, and this is where we're going to begin to get interactive, and we're going to talk for a little while about what this really means. So how to do what is required. Number one, we've got to know what you believe as an individual. Educate yourself on your beliefs and social justice issues. Discover local causes and organizations. Engage in local community causes. Support Black and minority-owned businesses. Be kind, be understanding, and compassionate. Support artists, writers, and activists who speak up and out, and make your own voice heard. Okay? So, know what you believe. It's very important as we engage in social justice and social activism work that we accurately know what we believe. You know, for anybody who's ever taught at the college level, when I engage with my college students on the first day of class and they want to give me all of their grand beliefs and things like that, and and I put a position out there, they may argue me down with it. And I simply say to them, I'm not trying to change your beliefs. I'm only here to make sure you know how to articulate what you believe. So now I want to ask a question to anybody who's brave enough to answer right now. What do you believe about social justice? Anybody? Please, somebody.
Um, I believe here in our society, social justice is not an equal justice. It depends on the circumstances, the place, the people that are involved, and the circumstances of an outcome that requires justice to be looked at.
Okay, if you can give me your name, because I don't see you on my screen, because I'm sharing my screen here. If you can identify yourself for me, please.
Okay, it's Reverend Darrell Baker.
Reverend Baker, I thought I knew the voice. Thank you. So I agree with you. Social justice depends on location and who's looking at it. Okay. All right. Anyone else? I see a few people here on my screen. If nobody volunteers, I'm gonna call on somebody.
Pastor Brown, this is Tamika Moore.
Okay, I know you. Okay, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Good, thank you. All right.
So the question in terms of what do I believe in social justice, I believe that when it comes to social justice, all of us have to take a stand and can't depend on one person to take the lead.
Very true. Very true. Now, let me ask you a sub question based upon what your answer is.
Okay.
Why do we not all take the lead?
Repeat the question.
Let me ask you a sub question. Okay. Why do you think that we wait for someone else to take the lead and we don't take the initiative? Let me say it that way.
I believe it became human nature to wait for someone to take the lead because we feel we don't always want to step out into troubled waters alone. And we don't want to be the voice that speaks up against injustice because then we're singled out. And as a people who always want to belong, we don't want to stand out for not belonging.
I agree with her. And there's fear also involved, fear of repercussion.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of repercussions, fear of not wanting to stand out. Thank you to both of you. Those are very salient points, and I think that that's correct, sadly. And I would offer another. Someone else was saying something. I'm sorry.
Okay. Ralph Brown.
Hello. You have a great last name.
I know I have. The first name is even better. But anyway, I'm just going to say social justice is elusive. It's like trying to catch a rainbow. You can see it from far off. You can theorize about it. You can talk about it, but you can't grab it because social justice is situational. It changes from place to place and how you look at it. So, I've gone through some situations going to an all-white university and all that kind of good stuff, been down that road, been in the marches and so on and so forth. Social justice, what's coming around now, we saw 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it buries itself. The racism, the sexism and so on buries itself and then it comes back in a different form. So we're seeing some things now. And we had a whole generation of young people who forgot about it even existed because they said, hey, I got my white friends. Everything is fine. I got the Betty Crocker type house. But all of a sudden, when somebody calls somebody the N-word, all of a sudden things start flooding back and they don't know what it means. Okay, so that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Brother Ralph Brown. You said something very, very salient. I'm gonna come right back to that. I'm gonna go back. Let me finish my point with what Tamika said. I see some hands raised, and I'll come back to that to you all momentarily. So the point that Sister Moore made about not wanting to stand out, and Brother Reverend Baker made the same thing, and not wanting to stand out as far as repercussions. I'll take it a step further. I would argue that sometimes there's a hesitation to stand out and stand up when we can't be the leader of it.
Mm.
And I would argue that I was having a discussion a few years ago with a Caucasian colleague of mine, and well-meaning gentleman, but we parted ways in thought processes when he said that it was now the responsibility of people who did not look of our skin hue to lead the protests and efforts for social justice, because we were no longer able to cultivate leadership like that in our own. And brother Brown, I think that now this is where I can tie in what you're saying. You are correct. We have seen this before, and I believe that we're seeing it now because we did forget it existed. Yesterday was Founders Day, and so I preached yesterday from the psalm that says, "How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" Mm-hmm. And I preached about the fact, and I argued in my sermon, not only are we having trouble singing it, but we having trouble singing it because we have forgotten the song, because we don't have to sing it that much anymore. And you're right, we have come a long way. We have white friends. We have the Betty Crocker House, like you said. Yes. We got a little bit of money. We can go to any school we want to go to now. Mm-hmm. And so when these problems come back around now, it causes us to face a very troubling fact that who will be the next Martin, who will be the next Malcolm, and who will be the next Medgar. Okay, I see hands. Reverend Pastor Kim.
How are you, my brother?
Good.
And Dr. Brown. I think it's important for us to understand that when we're talking about social justice, as believers, we cannot overlook the importance of the spiritual aspect in dealing with social injustice. We have to remember what the Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians 10:3. Though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. So what that means is that there is spiritual warfare that we have to account for, because what causes social injustice, the root of it, the racism and all of that, is evil. It is division that is at the root of what Satan is all about. So then we as the church, we as believers have to understand that we can't attack social injustice the same way that the world does. We don't war like they do. We have to understand the spiritual warfare aspect, and we have to tackle the enemy head on. Because if we look at people, we miss it. Because the Bible says in Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickednesses in high places. So when we look at it, we have to understand that racism, bigotry, all of that is unrepentant sin that America has never addressed. That's why it keeps raising its ugly head over and over again. So we as believers have to understand that that's the root cause of it, unrepentant sin, and we have to attack that spiritually. We also, again, we don't need to neglect the important things in the natural. We do that too, but we cannot do that and also forget about the spiritual aspect that is behind it. Okay, that's all I had to add. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pastor Gwen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I agree with her, but I've always thought of social justice, especially for us as a race. I think about the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis, who did not even get social justice in his own family. Mm. And I see us as a race. We may be just now leaving Potiphar's house. That might be where we are right now. We were in Potiphar's house. Things look really nice, and we excelled in certain areas, and in academia, in athletics. But it seems like after George Floyd, we almost coming out of Potiphar's house. But I do believe that the devil meant it for bad, but God means it for the good. And I believe that we follow and we trace the life of Joseph, will be actually tracing our own race, our own people as a race. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll say this and then we'll move on because we're having good discussion, but I want to get through these points. I argued in an article some time ago that the point you raised, Pastor Gwen, about the fact that sometimes in our quest to be liberative, we take on the attributes of our oppressors, meaning that we act the same way that they act. And I've said this before, and it's gotten me some negative friends, some negative publicity, and some friends stopped speaking to me for a little while, but I'll say it again. Until we show that Black lives matter to Black people, we won't be able to get other people to say it. And it's a troubling phrase to say, but it's very true because we're constantly killing each other. We're constantly killing each other, showing that there is no value in our life. But then on the other side of the spectrum, we're holding up our signs and protesting to others saying our lives matter. And so I thank you for that point. Let me hasten. Okay. Number 2, educate yourself on your beliefs and social justice issues. Now, it's important. I remember that I encountered some people outside of a Walmart one time when I was pastoring in the Central Florida area, and they were holding up signs to protest for one of the officers who was in the local sheriff's department up in that area. He had done something and he needed to be, there was some public outcry or whatever. So I asked this gentleman who was holding up a sign screaming, "He must go, he must go." I asked the gentleman a very salient question. I said, "What did he do?" And his response back to me was, "I don't know, but he got to go." And as much as that is a joke and it's comical, we must really educate ourselves on the issues that we're fighting for. We must, and we have to make sure we take it a step further and really verse ourselves on it, not just superficial or top layer stuff. We need to be able to dig down at the root of it and understand why it is an issue that we need to fight against. Because what we don't want to do is take on the issues of other people, especially if they have nothing to do with us and our work. Okay. How am I doing on time? Okay. I'm going to learn how to do this after a while. Okay. Discover local causes and local organizations. Reverend Oliver Brown, who was Brother Ralph, maybe he was our cousin too, but Oliver Brown, he was the leader of and the mover behind Brown versus the Board of Education. And in his memoirs, he said something that was so profound. He says he wasn't trying to get on a national scale. He didn't mean for it to get as far as it got. He just wanted his daughter to have a good education.
Right.
And have the right to one. And so what I would challenge everybody today, discover local causes and local organizations within your local community. All of us, we grieve Ferguson, we grieve Sanford and all of those other places. But if we really are honest with ourselves, there are some social justice movements that need to take place in our local communities. I'm gonna spotlight Reverend Pastor Gwen for a moment. I hope you don't mind. But I was really encouraged when you ran for superintendent. And I celebrate you for that because you did that on the basis of wanting to make sure that there was a better quality of education for people who look like you in the community, and not just you, but people who look like you in that community. And I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions that we all have about social justice. We don't have to wait till a police-involved shooting happens out of town to get involved. Right now, we are all seeing social justice work right now that we need to get involved with, okay? There are more people that need the vaccine than can get it. There are more people. They're now coming into the churches, which was a great move. They're coming into Black churches to be able to orchestrate the vaccination of the people. That was a social justice movement. Okay, I celebrate our consultant. She was calling around on behalf of Mrs. Harving, who was working to schedule people, to get people scheduled to get the vaccination. That's a social justice movement. In the community that I serve, one of the issues that we have here is people needing food. So there have been a lot of farm shares and a lot of food giveaways in this community. Our church, our brother pastor behind me, Reverend Roy, is at Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church. Every Wednesday they're doing. And if I have the time and I'm able to go over, I go over and help bag stuff to give out, because that's a local social justice effort. So I would challenge everybody today, don't just wait until it hits the news. Find some areas in your own community that you can be a blessing to and you can be a voice to. Anyone have anything they want to say on that? Okay.
I wanted to say, Dr. Brown, the AME Church, this is Black History Month, we were founded doing community service. Richard Allen and the Free African Society, we went to work. Before that, we were really actually founded as an AME Church denomination. We were out helping in 1787. Helping African people, free Africans, and people that were denied access and had second-rate citizenship from what the government wasn't doing. And my research of that, they gave out birth certificates. They gave out marriage licenses. They saw that the people had no place that they can get buried, so they bought some property and started a cemetery. These are some of the actions that our denomination was founded on. Eventually, Bishop Allen separated from the Free African Society and started the AME Church. But those are our roots. Our roots are in social justice.
Right. Can you identify yourself for me? I'm sorry, so I can address you by your name.
Earl Sparrow.
Okay, Brother Sparrow, my good brother. Yes, you're correct. And if you look, that was the origins of why a lot of AME churches in South Carolina, some in Georgia, some in North Carolina and other places, they have what? Cemeteries. Because that Mississippi, yes. And even
the oldest cemetery is there.
The where?
One of the oldest is in Mississippi, Starkville, Mississippi.
Because that's you're right, Brother Sparrow. That's how we were able to bury our dead, because we couldn't go to the whites only cemetery.
Pastor Brown.
Yes.
I'd just like to give a little shout out to Pastor Bowie. You're talking about food drives and giveaway.
Yes.
One things I've noticed, his church have had quite a few drives since the pandemic has occurred. I'm understanding he had a food drive just recently at his church. So just actually bless him, continue to do the good work.
Yeah, Michael's the man. All the pastors on the Central District are about that life. We all about that life. So thank you for that shout out, and thank you, Pastor Bowie, and the people of Mount Hermon. Another thing about the local causes and local organizations, it may seem small, but it has the potential to grow into something big. Again, Reverend Oliver Brown notes the fact that when he called the first meeting of 5 people in his home to talk about the injustice in the educational system, he had no thought that it would get to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. And so what we need to remember is that we have the power and the propensity to do much with little. All we have to do is make that first step. We say it all the time. We make the first step and God will make the what? He'll make the rest. Okay. How we doing? Okay.
Dr. Brown.
Yes.
Yaxie Jameson, in response to your topic here, discover local causes and local organizations, I would challenge the residents of Miami Gardens to attend the city council meetings once they go back inside the building. And also would extend an invitation to the residents who may be having or had some issues with the police department to come and share those concerns with the Citizens Advisory Committee. Presently, we're not meeting face to face because of the pandemic. However, I will be more than happy to share that information with the elder and anyone else once we do begin to meet back collectively to air your reservations about injustices as it relates to the police department. Chief Doelle Pratt has an open door. She has an ear for her community. So I invite each and everyone who lives in Miami Gardens to please do not hesitate to come and voice your concerns as it relates to what's going on with our local police department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brown,
Yes.
this is Pastor Wiggins. Let me echo on what Reverend Jameson just said regarding local governmental meetings. In every jurisdiction around the country, decisions are being made at the governmental table. And what I'm finding out is that there is not a great representation of people from the community at the table. And I've often said to the folk over at GMC that if you're not at the table,
You own the table.
you're on the menu. And in case in point, there was a meeting in Dania Beach where the people were talking about trees. Those Jewish folk were on there 40 and 50 deep and even had their children at the table in the meeting because they wanted them to see what goes on in government. And a major issue impacting the Black community, we couldn't get 5 people on the line, but the decisions are being made. And once they're made, it's kind of hard to roll them back because we were not at the table. So when you talk about social justice is being engaged. I heard folks say that it's situational. Yes, it is. But in every situation where we find ourselves, our voice has got to be at the table.
Very true.
This is Ralph Brown. I certainly agree with you on that. We're not at the right meetings and we're not there in numbers. And guess what? The meetings start when we need to go to our schools and talk to our kids' teachers. Probably 80 to 90% of the people have never talked to their kids' teachers. They let them go after they're about 6th grade. So, and then they only show up to talk to the teacher when the kid has done something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I did 10 and a half years of teaching, and my best thing is in the first two weeks, I talked to every parent that I had. And I called them and told them, hey, I want to thank you for sending me such a nice young person. And then they said, oh, my boy was expelled last year. So you know what? He starts at 0 with me. So he starts at 100%. So you know what? If we don't talk to the teachers, we're not going to go down to the city council. We're not going to go to and talk to the police chiefs and so on. We are a reactionary people, and we need to learn not to just be reactionary. We need to be in on the start. We need to help to form the policies instead of to have to live by the policies. So you know what? I noticed something and it bothered me, and I don't mean to do an indictment on anybody, but when this group did the Lift Every Voice and Sing, what is that song supposed to be? Isn't that supposed to be our Black national anthem?
Yes.
How many people stood up? How many people stood up? We didn't reference our own banner. So how are we going to have anybody else to reference it? We need to teach our children, and we need to act on how we want them to act. We are the light. Thank you, Brother Brown.
Thank you, Brother Brown. Thank you. Let me say this, and I'll get whoever was going to say. You're absolutely correct. You want to start in local social justice movements. start going to your children's school, talking to your children, teachers and the parents and the administrators of the school. I spent some time in the classroom and in the principal's office. If you do that, that sends a statement to let them know that you're concerned, you're involved, and they can't just get away with anything. Like my wife teases me all the time because I am a relational person. So I know all my son's teachers. I ask questions about them. You know, I have no problem. At my oldest son at his middle school, his high school, his principal and I were principals together. So we know each other well. At the elementary school, I'm always in the teacher say, she know me by name. And obviously me and my son share a name, my youngest son share a name, but she know because that's the first line of defense. Going and letting them see you. And I'm sure our teachers and principal friends who are on this call would agree, you know, you picking up the phone, calling that parent when good things are going on, that makes the parent act more quicker when you have to call about something bad. You know, because if you call in and say Johnny is a good student, and then Johnny act up 2 weeks later, mama gonna tell Johnny, you out there acting a fool at these people's school, and she gonna come out there and do whatever she need to do to straighten. But that's a great example of how a local effort for social justice. Because again, when I say local sometimes is in your own home and your local church. You know, I grew up at Greater Bethel, Overtown, and one of the things when we used to have angel choir rehearsal on Saturdays, the first hour of that time together before we sang any song, tutoring, help with reading, help with math, because that group of old ladies, they knew something then that we have forgotten. As you said, Brother Brown, we've forgotten. They understood the importance of that local context of social justice. I wasn't their grandchild, but I was a child at their church. And so again, I think that if we had more time, I would break down one of the reasons why we have lost that concept of local social justice is we've become so segmented and fragmented as a people. I mean, at Bethel, you know, if I did something wrong, I was gonna get a couple of beatings. Now, at some of our churches and some of our schools, you're scared to even say something to these kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because the parents are ready to come out there and fight you. Why? Because that's the disintegration of that point of connectivity with the Black community, where if one person had food on the block, everybody ate.
Right.
And we've gotten away from that. But that's a whole nother presentation. So I'll put my information in the chat box. We can talk about that another time. So let me hurry. I've got a few more minutes.
Dr. Brown, just before you hurry.
I'm sorry?
I did have a question. I want on Reverend Wiggins being at the table.
Is this my late president I hear?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I have went to the table, and in spite of going to the table and letting them know that we didn't want a store in our area, we have been fighting, letting these people know that we did not want a store in our area. So when you go to these meetings and then you come back, then they'll come with another new story to you about, oh, well, we think we can do this and do that. No, we said we do not want it. Don't change it. Don't go. So when we try to get to these commissions too, to fight them, to stand up for us, to say we do not want that store in our area, you know, so we do go in, and then too, Reverend Wiggins, it has to be many other of us to stand up and say, not just 5, but we won't go out. We won't go out. We'll sit home and we'll complain and we'll pout, but we need to go out and stand as a body to say that we do not want these things to happen. Right now, they just on the corner of where I live, just dated it in and start putting cars there. So at the next neighborhood meeting, I'm going to complain about that, because that is unnecessary for other people that comes in here and think they can do anything that they want to do. So we do need to go out and fight and stand together to stop some things, because we have the power to do that, but we have to be in numbers.
I will agree with you. And Dr. Honor, I'm coming to you in 1 second. I will say, and Pastor Wiggins is 100% with that. We have to go to those meetings. Listen, I have a relationship with the mayor of Miami Gardens. I had one with the former mayor, got a relationship with the chief. I sit on the nuisance abatement board for Miami Gardens. The only reason why I got on that board over 10 years ago at this point was because I was tired of seeing how our young Black men were handled by the police force when it came to drug charges and what constituted a nuisance. And I was vocal about it. And unfortunately, being vocal caused me, because they made me the chair of the board. And I've been trying to give that up for years and no one else will take it. But I've been on that board over 10 years because when they see that you're committed, they will bring you into the table seating. And you have to have that relationship with the mayor, your commissioners, have relationships with those people. They need to know your name because they need to be able to see what we stand for. And you're right, Deborah, if we do need more people to go, but sometimes you just got to be an army of one. Because if you're willing to be the army of one and the loudest vessel, then you can galvanize other people to come and stand with you. But sometimes you have to be that catalyst for one. So I celebrate you, Deborah, for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Honor.
Yes, sir. I've heard definite statements, social distance, things that let people lead now, however. But I've discovered, Dr. Brown, that where we run into problem with social distance is we Black folks have a delayed reaction. We don't want to react to things till after they happen. See, and when they've already happened and we react, then they already have more of what we call advantage. See, because when I guess it was last year or a year before, when the pastor was preaching the ecumenical service, he made this statement and it still sticks with me. He says, all supremacists are not white.
Wow.
See, so when we look at it in a sense, because we feel like we have overcome, and because we feel like we have overcome, it doesn't pay, and I'm gonna use me because I can talk about me. It doesn't pay for Reverend Honor to go up and stand up for right because John Brown might have a problem with it, and he or she is worried about who gonna like them and who ain't gonna like them, and they begin to split. And next thing you know, you find yourself standing by yourself. See, but what we have to find out and what we have to do is find a way to conquer this thing everywhere. Because even when the situation just happened, I put it on Facebook. I didn't bite my tongue. Where was Reverend Scott? Where was all the Black pastors that was supporting Trump when all this was going on? We heard nothing. See, so when we look at the fact of social justice, we got to look at the fact that social justice speaks of what? Truth to power. And we can't speak truth to power on a delayed reaction. See, I can't sit here and put my right shoe on my left foot, my left shoe on my right foot, and not tell you it hurts. I got to let you know it hurts so you can switch them up. So when I was working as assistant dean in elementary school, and this little boy showing out on the teacher, and the next thing when I go get him, we can't find the mama, but when the grandmama show up, the first thing he say, Mr. Honor, and she says, I went to school with Mr. Honor. Now that changed the table. Why? Because when we were coming up, mama and the teacher had a gathering from the past that we didn't even realize. And mama would say to you, you mean tell me I had to come get off my job because you out here acting a fool, embarrassing me? But now the teacher, them parents want to go and argue with the teacher. See, and then the next thing you know, when Johnny going to jail or whatever, I need y'all to do what y'all can to help my baby. So when we look at where we are today, we have to surpass delayed reactions and get in front of it.
Yep.
You're right. And I would argue we also need to look at some of the root causes that are predicating these situations. Because, for example, I gave this analogy some years ago. Suppose that when Trayvon Martin was in the community, he went to the store and bought the Skittles and the iced tea. Suppose he bought that stuff from an African American store in his community instead of a people that didn't necessarily look like him. Suppose there were more people who looked like him on that police force that day. Suppose that the community had a more cultivated system of a neighborhood watch program. I mean, there are so many root causes. There are so many things that could be examined and looked at. But I think you're right, Dr. Honor, because of our delayed response, we act too late. You know, like one of my favorite scenes from the movie For Colored Girls, Felicia Rashad was giving some counsel to the lady her husband, who suffered from mental illness, threw the children out of the window. And the mom and Felicia Rashad's character said something that was so profound. She says, you must take whatever ownership is yours. But if you were going to stop this from happening, you would have had to have stopped it a long time ago. It wasn't just going to happen the day he threw the kids out the window.
Exactly.
So I agree with you.
Yeah, and I know you got to go, but also too, when you said it just brought back to my memories how we allow a lady to put on the board some years ago that you can't discipline children, but she never had children.
Yeah.
See, and now look at us. When I knock on the door, they don't say Mama the pastor's here. They say Mary the pastor here. See, but I'll be 60 years old in June. And if I call my mama right now by her first name, I might as well go pick up the phone and call the dentist because she's going to take all my teeth out. See, and so that's what I'm saying. See, we should have never let somebody that has never had a child to determine whether or not a child should be disciplined. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Brown, may I say something?
Yes, Reverend Jones. How you doing?
I know I'm the old man. I'm retired, but I heard what Reverend Honor said and what Brother Brown said in regards to going out. I just want to ask a simple question. How many of you on right now that have gone to jail or have marched for civil rights? How many of you on right now that have done that? Because it's easy to talk about it.
I have.
How many of you have actually gone to jail for it?
I've got.
Just give me a hand wave if you did. Just give me a hand wave if you did. And see, that's our problem. We talk, but we don't take action.
That's right.
Okay. Reverend Jones, I'm gonna stop you right there. I've got like 2 minutes to get through the rest of this. So I thank everybody for what they're saying, but let me get through the rest. Okay. All right. Support minority and Black-owned businesses. Now, this is key. This is a great way in which we are able to exercise social justice efforts in our local communities. Okay. It kind of goes without saying, support them. And then one way that we need to support them, let's not always look for discounts and ask them to cheapen or lessen the prices of their services. You know, I've heard this analogy a few years ago. If in the Jewish faith and in the Jewish community, if they have 2 shoe stores, they will buy 2 pair of shoes. You know why? Because their mindset is that the first shoe store saw them through hard times previously, but they cannot allow this new business to come and fail. So instead of them 2 having to price war each other out and discount each other out, people just buy 2 shoes. It's a mindset. And then support artists, writers, and activists who speak up and speak out. It bothered me. There were some, I'll say this very quickly, Elder, there were some people who had negative things to say about how that young lady who gave that beautiful spoken word at President Biden's administration dressed, how she dressed, what she looked like, what kind of clothes she had on. And these were comments by Black folk. We need to support each other. We need to support our artists, our writers, and our activists, because if you look in the history of the civil rights movement, the celebrities and the stars and artists played a pivotal role in that work. And if we cultivate it again, they'll be able to do that again for us. And then lastly, and some of us have done that today, make your own voice heard. And you might be saying, well, I don't have a pulpit to make my voice heard. Yes, you do. Your job, your social circles, your families, your friends, any place in which you interact with people, you have the ability to be the catalyst for a movement for change. Think about issues that are going on in your local communities right now, and imagine if each person tackled one, what a place we would be. And lastly, to quote the lyrics from one of the lines from Lift Every Voice and Sing, let us march on until victory is won. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, too.
Thank you very kindly to our presenter, Dr. Brown, and to these moments